Welcome back to the Primal Druidry channel. I'm still Awen, Primal Druid at Large, and on this episode I had the pleasure and blessing of chatting with Martinique of Frey's Hermetic Supplies. On this episode, in this discussion, we chatted about Martinique's practice, our thoughts on magic, our thoughts on gatekeeping and what it really is and isn't, and some various opinions in that domain, as well as the truly incredible circumstances that led to the creation of the beautiful brick and mortar shop where Martinique was kind enough to not only speak with me and let me record our episode there, but also allowed me to record the next interview that will be released when it is time, sometime next week. So stay tuned, subscribe right here if you would be so kind, and get cozy if you're at home, buckle up if you're on the road, and otherwise enjoy this episode. Okay, so I am freshly caffeinated. I am for the first time visiting Frey's Hermetic Supplies. It is gorgeous, and if you could, I like to have people introduce themselves because frankly there's stuff I might miss, there's something you might want to focus on more than others. So if you could let us know who you are, what's going on.
I am Martinique from Frey's Hermetic Supplies, and Frey is somewhere MIA right now. He is more into the Hermetic part, and I'm more into the folk tradition part, and together we made the shop. So
beautiful. Yeah. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about just like what lights you up about magic? Like, what do you like to sort of see? What would you like to see more of? What do you like to cultivate? And because I get a little opinionated in my posts about like what pisses me off. So I'm like, let me start with what makes you happy. What do you like?
Makes us happy before we talk about what pisses us off,
which will come, I'm sure.
I like a lot of different traditions and studying a lot of traditions. I have my own tradition that I do, but as far as just what kind of keeps me going and lights us up, probably for both me and Frey, other than being able to create things and make tools for people, I like the history of it. I like continuing to learn all the time in my own tradition and even learning other people's traditions as well. And I think that's the part that kind of is the most fun, that keeps me going. I also do like the baby witches. Right. A lot of people are like, baby witches, they don't know anything. I like them because I remember when I was first starting out as well. So it's kind of like being able to see people learn things that are new.
Totally.
I don't know. I like doing the beginning classes. That's why I do most of the beginning classes.
No, that's amazing. And like, so, for one, it's so easy to like complain about stuff when you're not willing to help. And I feel like the whole people getting super irritated with baby witches, it's like when you turn 6.
There's Frey.
Howdy.
There's Frey.
Wizard at large. And, like toddlers aren't cool anymore. It's like when you're in kindergarten and you're like, Barney sucks. It's like, babe, you were there 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
How about you calm down and be nice?
Yeah, that's true.
Which, like, mind you, I get, like, I think I lead with coming off so bitchy and mean that I'm like, actually, I'm really not, but only in certain circumstances. So, like, if you sit, like, being new, I think is awesome. And, like, it's a fun place to be because you're not tied up in a bunch of dogma yet. Hopefully, like, you're kind of still exploring things. I personally, I don't know if this is me just being selfish and wanting to focus on what I like, but I've never felt really tempted, like when I do speak, when I do give classes, it's always on some super niche topic that I'm really obsessed with, and ideally I'm thinking I want more advanced, or not like at least people, I'm not an elder, right? Like I'm kind of just not a baby, not quite an elder, I'm somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And that's who I envision kind of speaking with. But, because I'm like, okay, I'm not the person that can necessarily interface as well for that, but I kind of just want to focus on my weird obsessions.
Yeah.
But it's super important, long rambling way of saying super important that somebody does, because how else are they supposed to learn anything?
Yeah, I think that is the hardest part when it comes to new people and baby witches. They come in here and they're like, what can I learn? I'm just starting out. And sometimes you can't even ask, what are you into? Because they don't know.
They don't know.
So I'm just like, well, what did I start out? You've got like Wicca, which is a gateway drug for a lot of people into it. You have like Manly P. Hall, where if you read some of his stuff, it's an intro into a lot of the high magic, even Wicca, or he'll even go off a tangent on different topics.
Yeah.
And then for me, I'm always more going off of like history. If people have a little bit of an idea of what they're into and what they want, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But when they don't, that's fun too, but it does make it hard.
Right, because it's like, okay, where do I focus? Like, when someone's like, teach me magic, it's like, babe, that's like...
You're like, what
where,
kind, what tradition, where? Right. And then they're like, there's more traditions?
Yes.
Other than like when I watched The Craft that one time? You're like, yeah, there's a lot actually. We've been pagan forever.
Exactly. Well, can you talk a little bit about what period in history or what part of history appeals to you the most?
A lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
A lot of periods of history. I'm trying to go back and back through like now more Neolithic times and looking at people who've been doing DNA analysis of how different people have moved through and where the Druids started, because a lot of people think of like Celtic and Druidism and they think of Ireland because that's where it survived so long and then got absorbed into Catholicism.
Right.
But they're finding it actually started in Western Europe. Mm-hmm. And then kind of moved out from there, which is why you get a lot of crossover. And then going from there, you have like the Celts, the Druids, you have the gods and things of the Gauls, as well as like the Germanic tribes. And that stuff is really interesting. About over a year ago, I went running around to all the Neolithic sites that I could find in Germany and all the standing stones and what was buried under there. So that was pretty interesting too. It's kind of like how we already know we were pagan before the Abrahamic religions invaded our space.
Right.
But like how far back can we go? Like what's the oldest? What did we do? And usually you're finding like birthrights, death rights, and those are like the main ones. They have all this like birth and fertility rights. And then of course harvest and hunting is like far back as you can go. That's what people were doing.
Sex, death, bread is my constant joke with the Druidic holidays.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's fun too because different traditions, people think of the Wheel of the Year.
Right.
As far as Wicca's concerned, certain ones on there weren't celebrated. Like Mabon wasn't a big deal all over the world.
Right.
There's maybe like one or two places where it was. But then you'll find like somebody's summer solstice will be on the solstice. Right. Other people's solstice is when the fish come in.
Right,
because they're a fishing community, so that's their summer holiday. Not necessarily on the solstice, but that's their summer celebration. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you'll find different things happening, and then the priest will say, okay, this is when this holiday is happening, because they're the priest and they say so.
Right.
So that's been interesting too, is learning different times and what's going on with different religions. I almost, for my personal studies, I pretty much exclusively focus on Europe, mostly like Western and Nordic Europe. Mm-hmm. But we have other people come in that are teachers, and we kind of study everything and kind of see what people did, because it's the same.
Right.
It's bread,
and
fertility, and the cycles, because we're all upon this earth.
That's right. I mean, and that's, to me, there's so many. Whenever I get too cranky, I try to go back to this is supposed to be like at least a lot of the time fun, or at least to enhance your life in a real way. And what I love is just knowing that there are so many jumping off points, but anytime, I think it's, how do I put this? It's important. Scholarship is super important, but whenever people sometimes get too caught up in the books and the exactness of it, I'm like, dude, for one, like, talk about the Wheel of the Year. We're in Southern California. Like right now, as I was leaving my house, it was too hot for me to drive over in my gym sweater, so I just wore a t-shirt. And I only bring that up to say, like, you know, be where you are, or at least have fun from wherever it is you are, because by all means, like, read, study, super important. I love that Druidry is the fusion of, like, you know, that sort of book knowledge, scholarship, and living magic.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're, you know, touching on a lot of really cool things with that. And I'd be curious to know, when you visited those Neolithic sites, what was that energy like? What was that experience for you?
It depended on the dolmen that I went to. That was I've got pictures of it up, the standing stone. That energy was really weird, because I was going back and forth on the road, and people were like, oh, there's like a sign, so you'll see it. Okay, there's a tiny little brown sign in between the trees pointing off into the distance. So you can't see it from the road. So I finally found kind of where it was, and I parked, and as I was walking up to it, it felt like, I don't want to say heavy, but if you've ever walked into like a really empty but very fancy church, it's like that hollow church feeling.
Ooh.
And as I walked closer, it felt like there was people around, and you could hear people's feet walking around the whole thing.
Wow.
And where it was, there's all the wars that had happened, and one in particular was underneath there. It was apparently Charlemagne and the Christians fighting the Vikings that had come down and the Germanic tribes. And so it was basically said to have a mass grave kind of underneath of that time.
Wow.
And I could just hear feet all over. So I went back to the car and I got like the bread and the cheese and the stuff that I had bought, and I went back up there and I set it there, and then the feet slowly stopped, and I said, I just want everybody here to know the pagans are still here. And all the noises stopped. I could hear a few birds and things, but it no longer sounded like people were walking. And the looking at me, it didn't feel like that anymore either. Because, I ran all over that country, and it was pretty intense. But that one place in particular, for the Neolithic sites, it was really interesting.
Wow.
So they don't actually know if the stone broke when the war was happening or when Charlemagne came in. Or if the stone had already broken and fell, because it was like flat and now it's kind of like that. They don't know when that happened.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of the places. But yeah, there's energy all over. But yeah, when it comes to like where you are and dealing with the energies of where you are, we've been talking a little bit about that with our group, because we'll go out and we'll do plant identification. And it's really interesting in California because there's so many invasive plants from Asia, from Europe. Tumbleweeds are from Russia. They're not even from here.
Oh, wow.
And so we'll go out and we're like, okay, this is supposed to be here. This is a plant that's native. And then you have like a European mugwort, or you have like a certain type of flower that's from China that was brought. That's the funny thing about lemon balm is apparently it was like Africa area it started, and because it grows so well everywhere and everybody liked to use it, both immigrants and trading and slave and everybody just lemon balm just went everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
So that's interesting to learn about the history of the plant, how it's been used, and then how it got here in the first place, because I'm not sure if people know how it actually came to California in the first place other than people trading plants. But it is interesting because I haven't lived here my whole life. So it's interesting dealing with the energies here and the plants here and the histories here versus when I'm home and dealing with the energies over there. It's very different, and you do have to respect like where you are and what's going on in the plants and the energies in order to live and work with it, or just take care of it. You know?
Where's home for you?
My parents are in France, so I was technically born in Long Beach, and when I was little, we all went to France, and we lived in the south in a cow town, and lots of Roman ruins.
Oh, sure.
Everywhere, lots of Roman ruins, and then there's a few stuff from like Gauls and Celts and things, but I feel more, like France and Germany and stuff. That's like some of those countries where my blood comes from, and I still have family in there. So it's a little bit different dealing with stuff here versus dealing with stuff over there.
For sure. I mean, you talk about history. We're we are still such a new country that it's Of course, the feeling would be nowhere even close, for sure.
Yeah, I do like America though, because I feel like America and France has a certain type of vibe that's maybe France has a certain vibe that's different from the rest of Europe too. Sure. Because they have like freedom of speech and they just protest all the time and they're crazy. And then over here it's like cowboys. Oh yeah. And you can say whatever you want and you're just crazy. And I like that insane cowboy thing. Yeah. So that's why I think I like both countries, vibe with both countries.
Absolutely. And I kind of like, when we think about like paganism and hopefully coming from a more authentic place, it's fascinating to me to look at even the sort of like myths of early American. I don't mean Native American stuff, full respect to that. I mean like that sort of like cowboy outlaw, like pioneer ethos that I'm like, there's something here to be worked with that I feel like people either don't know how to touch or it doesn't resonate with them or whatever. But I've been kind of slowly creeping towards like trying to flesh out something more with that, because it's like I'm born and raised in LA. Like, this is, where we are, at least for now.
There's stuff that's just very American witchcraft, and it does come from somewhere.
Sure.
But it almost ends up having its own vibe. Like, my mom had a friend her family was from Haiti, and the practices they do over there is different from New Orleans. And she knew the New Orleans stuff as well. Mm-hmm. And that has a very, like, American feel and vibe. Just like in the Appalachia, you have people from Ireland, even their songs and things are from Ireland, I think maybe Scotland, and then some Dutch, like Pennsylvania Dutch. They brought their traditions with them,
right?
And then you live here long enough, and it's either mixing with the local traditions, or it's just you're separated, so it's becoming something new. So you have this whole new American witchcraft, like Appalachian witchcraft,
right?
Which is different from the Irish stuff. There is, like, obviously crossover because where it came from, but that's interesting too. So the magic that's over here is a little bit different. We also in France and Germany, there's not really witch shops.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting because you'll find pagans.
Sure.
And it's more like people maybe putting together rituals or churches, or people are trying to build things, but just like going to occult shops, trying to find ones over there, it's not really a thing. You mostly find the paganism in people's day-to-day life. And I saw more of it in the cow town than you do. In the city, there's not really, every once in a while, there's like a weird yoga.
Sure.
Candles and stuff, but a lot of witchcraft that's still like way out there in the fields. Like, they kept certain traditions even if they're Christian,
right?
So that's interesting.
That's I find that really fascinating. And also, like, when you meet people that are coming more from that background versus like I said, I'm from LA, like, I'm very city, I'm used to, like, we're out, we're proud, we wear everything on our sleeve, like, nobody's really hiding, which has its pros and cons. But even so, like, there's this little mountain town I love, Idlewild.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Talk about super magical. No chain stores, no nothing, no DoorDash. I found out when I was really hungry, which is fine. But there's this tiny little shack called Mountain Mike's, ran by Mountain Mike himself. And so I was initially taken to Idlewild by this girl in high school I had a huge crush on. And, like, we were just going all over town. Nothing ever came of it. And so I visited, and I would talk about Baby Witch. I was 15, and I was like, oh, Wicca, everything's new and cool. And you see this cool, white-haired cowboy. That's totally his vibe, like, cowboy shaman. Like, he spent time on reservations. Like, really cool dude. And so I'm seeing all his incense and cologne and pelts, and I'm like, ooh. And he's got everything. He's got an ancestral altar, for Christ's sake. He's not calling it that. So, and I visited maybe 3 times since I was 15. The last one was very recently, and I probably should have curated what I said a little better, but I was like trying to thank him, and I was like, I came here when I was a baby witch, and I saw this stuff, and it made a big impression on me, and I could tell he was very personable. He didn't like me calling it witchcraft, and I was like, I get where you're coming from, but also be so serious. You have an ancestral altar, you have Hephaestus everywhere, you have Odin. But at the same time, I get it, because it's not where I come from culturally, but the amount of, like, to me, blatant paganism, blatant magic, but you're like, don't call it that.
Funny enough, when I was over there, calling yourself a witch, nobody bats an eye, I feel like, in Europe. Over here, there's people who just don't like the word.
Right.
And you're just like, okay,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
We're doing the same thing, buddy.
Are you a witch? You said you're a pagan. I'm a pagan, but I'm also a witch because I'm actually practicing pagan things. And over there, when I was running around trying to find out where to go, I was like, I need to go to these shop, Hickson.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay. It was just no big deal.
Cool.
But,
there, at the same time, though, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, there are pros and cons to absolutely every side of it, and I understand all of it. And part of me is like, city witch, and I started practicing so early. I've always been I've never spent a second in the broom closet. And part of me, I look back, I'm like, shit, I see why people do. It's not just a shame thing. It's like, you know what? Maybe not everyone needs to know my business. This is kind of personal. So I get that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
And also, like, even if you can explain whatever it is you're doing or you believe or whatever perfectly, concisely, articulately, and there will still be people who don't get it, don't want to get it, don't fuck with it, think you're evil, no matter what you say. So I get it.
Yeah, I try not to let that bother me too much because I'm to the point where, you know, sometimes people will come in here and they'll see some of the items that we have around, and they'll, you know, ask if we're a witch or whatever, and then we'll say yes. And some people are a little bit apprehensive. Right. Most people find it like interesting. Yeah. And I don't take offense. Some people, they'll be in here like other pagans and they'll take a lot of offense to it. And I'm just like, you know, everybody's just kind of on their own journey. And if you kind of know where people are coming from, I guess I kind of just let them be them. Right. If they don't like witches, if they don't like the word, that's fine. I do, and I'm going to use it. Yep. But I've had, you know, other situations too that maybe I'm not wearing a pentacle, I'm wearing something else, and somebody will think something of what I'm wearing. And until you like break the ice, then, or say something or are friendly to them, they'll take offense to something else you're wearing, even if it's not a pentacle or whatever else. So it's kind of just, that's always going to happen, you know? And I have to say too, it's like, I can't be a hypocrite because sometimes people will have a certain type of cross. Oh yeah. And I'm just like, are they Calvary Chapel? I'm just going to sit over. I'm just going to sit somewhere else. Back up real quick. I don't want to talk to this person, you know what I mean? Oh yeah. And I feel like everybody has, you know, a right to be wherever they want, or you know, as long as you're not super trying to stop people from living, right, or practicing their religion. If people don't like it, you know, they don't have to like
you said, America. Free speech and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I think I was still living at home when I was in the broom closet, and I technically was only half-assed in the broom closet because my uncle was into the occult. Oh, cool. And he was more of like an armchair philosopher, so I was like maybe 13, 14, and he was taking me to Manly P. Hall's place whenever I was around. Wow. And sending me books and things when we were not living in the same proximity. So I was always kind of like on that level. And then when I moved out, when I left, I was like 18, or maybe it was before I was 18 I left. And that was it. I wasn't going to be in the broom closet at all. Totally. So I know some people will maybe have odd living arrangements and they have to be in the broom closet. A lot of people tell me they're afraid for their job. I was a substitute teacher for like 6 years. I was never afraid for my job. I didn't talk about it, like, because I didn't like the kids knowing about me at all. Right. I don't want them to know if I have pets. Totally. If I'm married, if I like nothing, everything I felt like was a distraction. Do your homework. Yes. But as far as the people I worked with, pretty much everybody knew that I was a pagan. And funny enough, some of the kids even found out because we had a barber shop next to our last shop, and some of the kids were over there and got their hair cut. So then they told people that I was in the witchcraft shop, and I was like, yes.
You got me. So I respect that though. I mean, because it's like if you're off the clock, you're living your own life, whatever. But I very much respect that. And part of me at the same time, I want to say, like, yet another kind of benefit to maybe not being abundantly out there is something I've seen a lot on the internet in the past few years is people really going hard on niche labeling themselves of like, I'm a green arrow, whatever, and it's like, you started practicing a year ago. Yeah. Why are you calling, like, by all means, like, pick something to focus on and learn one at a time. I remember fixating on tarot just to learn it when I started. And then I'm like, okay, cool, I have this skill, I'll move on. But the super hedging yourself into something that crazy specific that early on kind of just strikes me as a bad idea.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I know sometimes people are drawn to certain things for a reason. Sure. And like, go get obsessed, go do you, and learn that. And if you move on later, then you do. Right. I don't know so much about labels. I feel like for me, I try to general label, but see, other people might have a problem. Like, people will say, I'm a heathen because I worship Norse Germanic gods. Yeah. And I am, but I usually just call myself pagan because it's also an umbrella, because I do the witchcraft stuff. And then I'll have a different problem. Like, people will be like, oh, you're a heathen? Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I thought you were just pagan. Well, what's just pagan? I don't know. I don't understand this. Or now they get all the labels with the witch. Like, I'm a witch. If you need some teas for menstrual cramps, I can do that. If you need revenge on someone because they are harassing your kid, we'll throw witchcraft hands.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't like the whole like black, white, gray, green witchcraft. If you're a witch, a lot of times you do it all. Of course I'm a green witch. Where do you think I'm getting throwing the poisons?
Right.
So, you know, it's like I'll start making balms and teas and all that, and then I'll be called the green witch. And then everybody who doesn't like me will say I'm throwing curses, then I'm a black witch. And then, you know, I'll help somebody with something and it works and they're super happy because it healed their dog. Now I'm suddenly a healer, which I'm probably the worst at.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's weird. I don't know. I was born in the late 1900s where all the labels, I remember being in high school, labels were not cool. Like, I was an artist. I'm always painting, but to even call yourself an artist, I was like, I don't know, man. Isn't art just what people do? Am I really an artist? Do we need all these labels? And everyone is trying to throw all these labels off. Now everybody wants 10 million labels, so they're like, you know, they're this label, and they're this within that label, and this within that label. And I feel like for paganism, I feel like that's one of the religions that can be very open to everybody. And it's such an umbrella term that's why I kind of like to keep things that umbrella term. Totally. It's like we're doing like a pagan fair that encompasses everybody. We've even had Catholics and stuff come to the pagan fairs. And I feel like the more general we can be, because we're already niche, all right?
Yes.
Pagan is already
we forget that.
Pagan is already like tiny. We are growing, but tiny religion. That I feel like that's enough of a label. Or a few of the labels like witch and stuff like that. Those are enough of labels. But yeah, when it gets into like, now we're doing the colors, green witchcraft and everything, I'm just like, all right, I'm not going to keep track. You're going to tell me this and I'm not going to remember.
And how about like just focus on, I feel like your point about doing art is so true. Like it crosses over to magic directly because it's like, all right, mind you, sure, if you have a soul calling, if you really are, if this is your discipline, your thing, God bless, I love it. But we focus, I think the obsession with the collecting labels, and I'll say this, again, not even with just magic, across the board, the more time you spend writing this perfect bio with like, I'm da-da-da, like everything, the less time you're spending doing that thing, being that whatever it is. And so much of what we do, Royal We, is just, it's supposed to be lived, it's supposed to be experiential. So I just, maybe this is like me becoming not 20 years old anymore, but like I kind of, the thing that worries me most about the younger generations coming up is I'm like, you're online too much. Sorry, like
they're online too much. They're online too much.
Yeah, go outside.
And it's bad because we know that they're always pushing the crap to the top. So all the stuff that's very unintelligent is pushed to the top. And I tell people, you know, if you're spending more time on Twitter than you are touching grass, go out, smell herbs, pick them, see when their seasons are. You need to know this stuff. Even if you don't call yourself a green witch, you're going to need to know some of this stuff. And start, you know, experiencing that. That's what I like about a few of the people in our group too, is they'll just go out in the wilderness, or they'll be like, when's the next day we're going plant identification, and we'll go out. And you learn a lot. You know, we have one person in the group, she's awesome. She comes from a like Mexican household, I think some native too. And we were out doing plant identification, and I know a lot of the European stuff because I use it all. And she's like, oh, yucca, you can actually pull it up and you can eat the root. And now I really want to eat that right now.
It's good. I've had yucca fries. They're fire.
Describing what it tastes like, and I was like, I would have never thought.
There you go.
And it's like, that's something that you're going to learn and see and experience, and then you're going to see when the plant is blooming, when is the good time to do it. And a lot of this stuff you just can't find online, and if you maybe used to be able to, it's buried now underneath crap.
Exactly.
So you find the lies first. And then if you keep going, you find the truth, which makes it difficult. That's why I'm big into books, and then going out and physically doing hands-on stuff. Because it's just not the same as it used to.
That's what I really find frustrating, is like the idea, at least supposedly with the internet, is like, cool, you can find all this information. But like you're saying, everyone, and I get it, working a 9-to-5 sucks. Everyone is trying to be an influencer. So I get it, whatever. I don't want a normal job. But at the cost of, I find it, this is maybe a small thing to fixate on, but I find it telling that people so often call what they post online content. I'm like, what you're writing an ad for the paper, like it's not content. Like you're creating something ideally, but so much of it is nothing more than content, than fluff. And it's just, they're talking about, this isn't about being mean to anyone. It's when we've seen 5 million videos on your, whatever your thing is valid, here's my patron goddess. It's like, cool. What does that mean? What does that effectively mean for anyone? How do you translate that into something workable? Do you want to just be patted on the back so badly that we're not actually contributing anything anymore? And like, I'll hop on, like, there's websites like Sacred Text, Project Gutenberg, whatever, where I'm like, you know, I'm reading the Cattle Rated Cooley, I'm reading the old Celtic stuff, whatever your focus is, you can find it. It is still out there, but the getting buried by bullshit thing, it does. I don't even have TikTok on my phone. I can't, like, it pisses me off way too much.
Yeah, it's bad. Somebody will come in, they'll just ask for the most asinine thing, and I'm like, I wonder what's on TikTok today.
Right.
I wonder why they're asking.
Yeah.
And then, there's been a lot of that, but...
Hello, listeners. Brief message from Editing Owen here. If you're enjoying this conversation, I would love your support at my Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can read my druidic acorns, my little nuggets of daily druidry, of practical things that you can incorporate in your day-to-day, in your practice, or simply reflect on as you see fit. There are higher tiers if you would like to support at a deeper level. That gets you audio meditations recorded by yours truly and more benefits that I am currently brewing up. So Patreon, Primal Druidry, as little as $3, I greatly appreciate. Anything above that, I, of course, greatly appreciate as well, because I am a full-time weirdo, and that support is how I keep this going. So I appreciate you guys, and let the conversation continue.
It's hard, though, because, you know, in the world we are now, people are rewarded for pumping out content.
Precisely.
So if you're posting multiple things a day, that's how you're getting it, and people monetize their stuff too. And then they're like, okay, now now that I've monetized this, I need to keep doing it. Yeah. And I feel like that's caused, content to be less meaningful because they're just trying to pump something out. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of snowballed, because there are definitely people who are just grifters. Yeah. They just want to make money off of what a trend is. Yeah. There's definitely people who maybe they had something go viral for whatever reason, and now they feel like they have to produce content.
Totally.
We're in an age where if you're technologically savvy, you're rewarded monetarily, and everybody needs to eat. So it's kind of like, I think it's like both a problem and then people trying to find a solution for that problem and not being able to break out of it. And then we're also living in a weird age to where if I don't post something for a week, I'm dead, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, she must have died. Like, you know what I mean?
Anymore.
Like, okay, on my personal page, I post when I do a new painting. I don't post all the time, or I'll post a ritual. Yeah. And then that's it. So maybe I'll be dead for a month and nobody will see anything. And then they're like, oh, there she is. And for me, I'm not gone that long. Right. But, you know, we're doing all the work and we're working. But definitely, what is it called? I don't like instant gratification. Yeah. If you get instant gratification for something, that's a sign that it probably isn't that meaningful. Yeah. You know, all of these people, too, that were discovered overnight and are very talented, they've been working for probably 10 years.
It's not overnight. Yeah.
It's not overnight. They were discovered overnight. Yeah. But all the work, if it's really good, all the work that they've been doing, they've been working on for years. Me and Frey are working on books, you know, and different things, and we don't talk about them and what they are. It'll come out and people will be like, oh, this came out yesterday, even though we're like working on it.
It's been 10 years.
You don't know how long it's been. So I think that's a problem, is the instant gratification too. I don't know. I think some people are stuck on it. They want the dopamine rush or whatever it is they get. Right. And then other people, I think it's more of a fear of maybe not making money and monetizing that day. And then maybe they can be kind of trapped. I've seen that with even YouTubers. So.
Oh, for sure. And the instant gratification, I think, is really important to talk about, because mind you, like, because I started as a teenager, I'm well acquainted with, like, I know damn well what real gatekeeping is. I've had old people be shitty to me for simply existing, like, for simply being a young woman that was in a space that was mostly older people. So to be very clear, I'm very against real gatekeeping. It's a horrible way to treat the next generation. However, people are so fucking online and entitled and this instant gratification shit that they will call anything gatekeeping that isn't give me exactly what I'm asking for right now. And it's like, you don't, let's unpack that, as the kids say. There's so many layers to that. For example, like, okay, my first question, do you even believe magic is real? Because let's go with magic is real, which I believe, why would I that's like handing over nuclear codes to a monkey, sorry. Like, if you just started, you have no business working with everything ever. And also, even if at some point, let's say you do have that potential, by all means, I'm a big believer, do crazy shit, scrape your knees, learn the hard way. I'm a Scorpio, that's how I learn. Yeah. But put the fucking work in. Like, learn how, if you can't even meditate, how are you going to do trance? You can't tell the difference between your brain doing wish fulfillment. Like, so that's where I'm just like, okay, anyone who's been around at least half the block once for 5 minutes, someone like me telling you, hey, like, maybe learn how to meditate, I'm not gatekeeping. If I really didn't like you, I would say you have no business doing this, get the fuck out of my face.
But see, it wouldn't work if you didn't say, hey, do these things to condition your brain.
Yes.
Rewire your brain and, quite frankly, fix it, especially if you're scrolling all the time, fix it, because you're going to jump into something, and the best thing that will happen to you is it won't work.
Precisely.
And the worst thing that'll happen is you might get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like gatekeeping is like, there's like a line there that has been, I feel like, purposely blurred, because there's certain things that you probably shouldn't be getting into right away. You know, people jump into even certain gods. They'll be like, this god, I'm going to just start working with this god, not knowing the history, not knowing the mythology, and then they just end up finding something very, volatile, or, not knowing how to work with something. For me, what you're supposed to be doing is passing the knowledge down. Somebody gave it to us, we have it for a little bit, and then we pass it down to the next generation. Yeah. But you're supposed to be, I'm all for touching the stove and getting burned and learning, but you don't want somebody to like get so hurt or caught on fire or whatever that they don't want to come back to it either. Yeah. So, and then there's certain things that are out there that are just wrong. And if somebody says something completely not factual, I think that somebody should say, hey, this isn't factual. It's not gatekeeping because you're correcting, whatever it is. Yeah. So, and I feel like that's just constructive criticism. Like, if I learn something and I've known something for a while and it turns out to be wrong, okay, now that's just added into what I know.
Let me know, for sure. Yeah. And there's also the fact that, like, when you talk about, the distinction between witchcraft and paganism, polytheism, whatever, witchcraft, a lot of the time when we talk about traditional craft, European stuff, British, whatever, a lot of it was very mystery tradition, like, learn how to answer this riddle, do your time, in your hermit phase or whatever, and then come back. And that, I understand has its, I'm sure it's frustrating, and we don't live in that world for better or worse, but like, again, I feel like if you were to meet that old lady, the elder village, whatever witch, and she did that traditional process with you now, people today would call that gatekeeping, because she's not just like, here's my entire grimoire. It's like, that's part of the process.
That's part of the process. You don't deserve it. I know Poke was in here. He told a good story about Paracelsus. A guy knocked on Paracelsus' door and said, I heard that you could burn a rose to ashes and then bring it back. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I can. Well, let me see it. No. No. Yeah. And so the guy got really mad, said, you can't do it, then you can't do it. He's like, fine, then tell people I can't do it.
There you go.
And the guy leaves, and the rose that was left that he wanted him to transmute, he burnt it to a crisp, brought the rose back after the guy had left. Because he's like, you didn't learn the alchemical process to know what I was doing, to appreciate what I'm actually doing. Right. I just show it to you right here, you're going to say it's a magic trick. If you don't actually go through everything and understand the alchemical process, it's going to mean nothing to you. Other than be a magic trick. Yeah. And that's the thing too. We've lost a lot of that in society anyway. We've talked about that a lot, and we're trying to implement some of those things in our coven, to where it's like a lot of these coming of age things don't exist.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like for women, you don't get a choice.
Oh yeah.
You know, one day you're just bleeding.
Yep.
But there's other things that have been like stolen from us, and for men, there's no going out and catching a fish the first time and all these things. A lot of people are lacking that, and between that and having life be like a little bit too good, people complain about everything. People nowadays are very entitled.
Oh yeah.
People are very emotional in a bad way. And that's caused a lot of problems too in witchcraft. There's people that'll come in here and you can see that they're hungry for something and they want to learn. And I'm like, not only can you start here with us, but we've got teachers and we have elders and we bring them in and we're going to learn this shit and you're going to be the best witch that you can be. There's other people that come in and I'm like, nope. Nope. You're either not ready or you don't really want this, or I can see that maybe you've been handed everything your entire life, you know. And that's also caused problems just in general. Like, people don't know how we got here. We were in a tent in 2017, 2018. Damn. We lived in a tent. We lost everything. Frey had fraud committed against him. We were living hand to mouth, and we were given a letter saying that everybody in the apartment complex was gone. Wow. You know, once their lease was up, because they were raising the rent by like a couple $100. More than they were supposed to be allowed. It was easier to get rid of people than that. And we ended up in a tent in the woods. So that was our hermit time. And what did Frey do? Frey wrote down all his Book of Shadow stuff and said, hey, there's holes in it from my teachings. I need you to go to the library and see if you can find this, this, and this. So I'd go to the library, do research, come back to fill in some of the holes, which is our Witchcraft 101 class. So people come into our Witchcraft 101 class. That's the work that we had been doing for years leading up to the class, filling in holes. And then, you know, when we first opened, we had people, you know, kind of being, we went from a tent to a motorhome, and in the motorhome is when we started our YouTube channel.
Hell yeah.
And we were making candles, and we had a generator then, and the camping stove, we were making candles, he was making oils, and we were still getting to Pagan Pride, because technically we've been vending at Pagan Pride since 2012.
Holy shit.
And so this was like 2017, 2018, we're homeless.
Yeah.
I had a job as a substitute teacher still, and we were making all this stuff, so when we opened our shop, it was kind of like a now or never thing. We almost had nothing in the shop. So people were coming in being dicks.
Sure.
I was still working as a teacher to keep things and bills going while we were leveling up the shop. And so people will come in and see what it looks like now. Yeah. And this has been quite a few years of making things and working our butts off to get here. And I've had readings before where people come in saying, when are the spirits just going to give me money so I can have this shop? Do you know what you're asking for?
Babe.
Because they're going to be like, oh, you want a shop? Here.
Yeah.
You lose everything.
Yeah.
And you start from the ground up if you really want it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you know, I think that's why I get along with Sal and Popey. They built their shop. That's why I get along with Ren. She built her shop.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like people don't see all that. They just come in, they're like, oh, did you get a loan? No.
Shut the fuck up.
No, we didn't. Couldn't even apply for one. Wow. Nobody would give me a loan. So yeah, just ground up, we didn't even have all the candle colors. So I think too, people have to go through things and experience things. You can tell when someone comes in here and they want it. And you can almost see where they're going. And you can tell when people come in here and they need hardship for real in order to actually attain anything. So
that's incredible. Thank you. I had no idea. I really appreciate you talking about that. And not remotely to make light of it, that's when you talk about like people need that sometimes some people need that hardship and that ordeal. You could have turned your back at any time. You could have been like, fuck it, let me get a corporate, let me go 9 to 5, let me do something safe. You fucking poured your blood, sweat, tears, and soul into this, and it's beautiful. So fucking I'm so glad you talked about that. Thank you. Oh my God. And also Sal, I love to give a shout out whenever I can. Him and Popey are always, they've been, since I had even just the inkling of the idea of like, oh, what if I, just talk, I started talking about what I do, and not because I think I'm all that necessarily, but like druidry is so slept on. Most people don't even know, even in paganism, it's such a tiny, tiny niche. I'm like, what if I just get it out there? And I knew Sal from the BDSM world. And because I have a whole history with that.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, fuck it. Like, come, I've got the space. Come here. We'll take a little cut. You do your thing. And I honestly, not to play favorites, it is kind of my favorite place to speak out of that I've done so far.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I love his love of Hecate, to like minorly sidetrack.
Yes.
You can, when you talk about feeling, that's real devotion. And
we don't send people a lot of places.
Yeah.
We definitely, if they can get there, we send people up there because I believe the gods are real.
Oh, yeah.
I can feel them. I know they're real. There's a want there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection. And he has that.
Yes.
And that's why I'm just like, oh, you want that pantheon? He's the guy. You want this pantheon? Then come here.
We're here, yeah.
But that's one of the reasons I like him. The other reason I like Sal is because he's on the same level with me and Frey when it comes to just giving people certain information.
Yeah.
When we first came on the scene, there was so much secrecy. It was actually kind of stupid because when it came to traditions and learning and working your way up, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When it came to just like simple things like, we can't source our frankincense oil anymore. Can you tell us where you get yours?
Sure.
It was such a threat,
God.
that people wouldn't even tell where suppliers and things are. We already had our own recipes. We already had stuff going on. So what did we do? Frey ended up making his own oils out of all these things, and now we sell them to people.
God damn.
Because it's like,
Jesus.
I would want to know where people got the lanyard. I tell people where I get my stuff printed, and I make my own fabric and stuff. And it's not a threat to me if they know where it's going to be printed. I have my own designs. They obviously have theirs. Now we can make our own stuff. It's not a threat. And that was the stuff when we first came on the scene that was like that. And that's one of the reasons I get along with Sal is nothing's a threat to him.
Fuck yeah.
Because he does his own stuff too. So
absolutely.
He will tip. You're like, hey, where'd you get this, or how did you learn this, or whatever. He's like, oh, this is how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And really, I fully believe that, like, even if, like, you do give people that info, nobody can be you.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, you can give people info for things all day long, and you don't know. Frey's told at least 3 people how to make liquid mercury solid at room temperature. Has anybody done it? Just Frey.
Right.
It's not, he's not going to give that out to everybody because it is poison.
Right.
But for certain people who are old enough, here's the information. Can you do it? No, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, so
that's magical truth right there. I guess I'm curious also. Tangents are my style.
Yes.
Every real practitioner that I have asked over the past few months, I started getting the feeling months ago that this season was fucking different.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Flat out. This is the worst. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, like, what, if you feel like talking about it, what are you feeling off of this Samhain season? Because, like, it's not just, like, I get it, every time Mercury retrograde comes around, everyone's like, yeah, I banged my ex, some stuff, whatever. And cool, I get it. But I'm not talking about stuff like that. Yeah. It's different.
It's different. There's a lot going on. Some of the stuff might be astrological, or maybe it's just an election year or whatever else is going on. This whole year has been different. I feel like, when we first started, it was a little bit of a struggle. Oh, yeah. And I really feel like 2022, 2023 were awesome years.
Yeah.
I felt a lot of sense of community. We worked really hard to bring everybody together, keeping booth fees down, everything. Yeah. We did a ton of ritual. We did a ton of art. Like, it was happening. Like, it was just jumping. Beginning of this year happens, and everybody everything thinks. I thought it was just me. Mm-mm. Everybody's at each other's throats.
Oh, yeah.
All these people who think that they're all these big witches are coming from a place of fear.
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed that it's not necessarily gatekeeping that I've been seeing, more than everybody's trying to be a police.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
preach.
First of all, was born in Long Beach.
Yeah.
Fuck the Pogo.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not going to put up with here either.
Thank you.
And everybody's like, investigating everybody, and everybody's at each other's throats, and everybody's talking bad about everybody and gossiping, and all this stuff's being ripped apart. And the thing that's weird to me is last year we had such a problem with Calvary Chapel.
Right.
Anytime you see a Christian people protesting, I would bet money it's always Calvary Chapel. So we had that whole thing, worked way too hard to get our fares back.
Yeah.
For some of the people who were like vendors to be a pain.
Yeah.
And all these people are just like, you know, I think what's happening is we're seeing we've been in a transition phase for a while. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the heat be turned up. Oh, yeah. We're seeing a lot of death and rebirth really fast. And I don't think some people are not handling these transitions very well is one of the things. Yeah. There's a lot of death right now, both physical death, people falling off and going away, a lot of changes. People who can't roll with the punches are falling away. Yeah. And a lot of how people are and how people treat each other is slowly coming out in the open too. Mm-hmm. Everybody's almost like hyper aware of what they're seeing. Yeah. And it's almost like multiple witch trials are going off at once too, like within the community. Everybody's like doing this weird thing. I'm watching people point fingers, and then they want to come here and talk to me or about it, and like most of the time I don't want to hear it, especially if I don't know who you are. Right. But it's been a weird year. I could say this is the hardest year since we opened. As far as like having the shop, it's been the hardest year. Yeah. It's been the hardest year for a lot of people financially. We've seen a lot of GoFundMes go up and not get their full funding. We've seen a lot of people try new startups and those not get funding. And I feel like people are really afraid. Even some of the elders are kind of really apprehensive about things. Oh yeah. And for me, I always say the same two things. One, I'm not even afraid to die. I don't even care. I really don't want to be homeless again. Yeah. But I'm not afraid of anything or anyone. And I try to make other people understand that, especially in this time. And, you know, everything is a cycle. You have to go through bad sometimes. You have to go through good. Make sure you just see this as temporary, because it's temporary. Yeah. And the other thing, so one, don't be afraid. And the other one is don't take shit and don't give shit. We're witches. Mm-hmm. We're free people. Yes. Don't fucking tell me what to do. Don't tell people what to do. Don't get up in people's business. Don't try to like pull people down and blow out their flame to make yours brighter, because it ain't getting brighter.
No, it is not.
And just stop it. Just do your own shit. Do your own work. Ride this out. Get through this hard time, and things will be better later. So, you know, things can get really bad. Things can get really bad. And as long as you have some people around you, you'll be okay. We're all trying to look out for one another and make sure nobody's homeless, make sure nobody's out. You know, we've all tried to do fundraisers for different people before, and that's how you can kind of get through this time. Yeah. Because, you know, everything that's been going on this year, I think it's definitely been a different year. It's been crazy. I'm not going to lie, this year's been shitty.
Yeah. Straight up. No, but serious words of wisdom. And I feel like that's, if we are going to say that like paganism, witchcraft is a community, then fucking act like it. Like, because if you're not, and at this point in my life, like, if you're not going to act like it, I'm not especially inclined to be super patient with that type of behavior. So I fully I love there's this lady that I follow, Clementine Morrigan, online, and she's like, fuck the police means we don't act like cops to each other. And I'm like, how is that so hard to understand? Can you stop? Like, we're already, as you said earlier, for like different multiple reasons, we're already a tiny minority. Yeah. The fuck are you doing?
Yeah. We have a Christian problem all the time of people trying to like tear us apart. People are always worried about their religious rights and everything. Yeah. Oh, you know what's a great thing to do right now? Infighting. Right. What? Let's just kick ourselves while we're down.
Jesus. Yeah. You're making it easier for everyone on the outside. So
definitely.
And you know, like, I always own it. I am not everyone's cup of tea. I am some people's shot of whiskey. That's okay. I take absolutely none of it personally. But at the end of the day, like, if we're all here to do magic, then build that up. Like, build up magic itself. you don't have to be everyone's bestie, but don't be a fucking problem.
Yeah.
I would say.
People ask the type of people we pick for our coven, because we have like quite a range of people in our group. And it's very simple. I like people who like doing magic. I don't care if people don't get along on certain levels. I don't care if people are voting differently. I don't care if people are like, oh, I think this, we should do this type of spell. We can do it, and then we'll do a different type of spell, and we'll see what works. All these people that we have, we like to do work. We like to watch what's going on. We like to make things. We like to make tools. We like to do work. We like to learn things. And that's what we're on the planet for. A lot of things that people get caught up in are very temporary. A lot of things maybe that are going on can be solved a certain way. And maybe I feel like a lot of people aren't good problem solvers right now too. So a lot of the problems going on, it's like, well, how are you problem solving? Oh, you're not? Yeah. You're just on Twitter. I can't do anything with that. So that's one of the things is that's what I think that's what needs to be done is we need to come and just do magic, be cohesive. I've talked before to, we had an elder in here the other day for an interview, and he was very disheartened about some of the stuff that is going on that he's watching, because he's like, I saw this in the 90s, I saw this in the 70s, and now we're going through another wave of crap and all these stupid witch wars, which are usually, people who declare them usually don't have the tanks and the equipment.
Thank you. Thank you.
They're here with rocks, and we have like tanks.
I hate to say it, but thank you.
So it's like, it's just kind of like shit stirring and stuff, and he's very disheartened because he feels like, how are we going to get anywhere and continue to be taken seriously? And that's always my thing is, on the world stage we have a pope, on the world stage we have a Dalai Lama. Where's us? And he said we're never going to get there. Honestly, he said we're never going to get there. And I had to say, half the time, more than half the time, I kind of believe that. We have a few people up there that are close, that are kind of out there, who've done things. Like Selena Fox, and then there's another guy, his name escapes me, but he's over in Britain. And they're up there doing talks, running around and talking about paganism. And that's as close as we've gotten. Some people blame the fact that it's because paganism is such an umbrella term. To me, that shouldn't really matter. We can have somebody who's okay with all the umbrella then up there. But that's definitely, he's very disheartened with everything that's going on right now, because last year and the year before felt really awesome. And this year feels really shitty. And I've even reverted back to doing a lot more hermit stuff. Because quite frankly, I'm happier there. If I could be in a tent, not a tent anymore, a hut, maybe something built in the woods, something that doesn't leak, but in the woods again, and doing my artwork and just painting, that's my true love.
Beautiful.
And it's like, and I do pagan religious artwork, and it's like, there's certain things where I kind of feel like, do I have to do this? Do I have to do this for people?
Right.
I feel like in a way I do, because I took on the label of a priesthood, registered as a priest. But there's certain days where I'm just like, I could just walk off. Do I have to do this? There's usually something that comes up that keeps us here.
Word.
So.
Well, thank you. You have been spitting fire this entire time, if I may say so. I really, really appreciate all of your insight. And the last little anecdote of my own I'll add is, it's refreshing to hear you talk about it, because when I started what I've just come to call Primal Druidry, and I had a little private working group, that was, I didn't need to fully even know or care I'm interested what your past experience is, but I'm not looking for people with uniform beliefs or all thinking or doing, living, voting the same way. Like you said, literally, do you want to do ritual? Do you want to do magic? Which shouldn't be as big of a question as it is, but it really fucking is. Because the amount of times, and I say this with love, I love y'all, but I have done over the past few years so many witchy social meetups and rituals and different gatherings, and unless I really crack the fucking whip, it inevitably devolves into some kind of weird social club. And I'm like, no. I love y'all, we should be friends, we should be chatting and whatever, but we should also be doing, if we're not doing magic, how are we witches?
Yeah.
Question mark? Like,
I feel that way too. Like when our coven's together, we do work,
Yeah.
we do the work, we do ritual, we do things.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the last ones we did was the Hecate one for Aslifer to make his ink.
Oh, wow.
And we had all of our keys and we invoked Hecate and everything. Then when the ritual's done, we go home and we have our own lives or shops or things that we do, and we come back together when we do work.
Yes.
And we're all chill and we're all friends with each other because of it. But we have the coven, we have the order,
Yeah.
and nothing we ever want or do is like a social club thing.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I just that's kind of how I feel. The coven is for ritual work. The
Yes.
order is for like almost like the great work of what are we going to do as a whole? What are we getting together? What are we building?
Yeah.
And then it's not a coven meeting or anything if we're going
Right.
to hang out with each other. And people hang out with each other in different places outside
Totally.
of the coven. But when we actually come together, that's when I feel like it is a time for work. I don't want to
Yeah.
call a SBAT and they're not meeting. We've canceled SBATs because we're like, what are we doing this SBAT? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I don't really know. Then there's not one.
There's no need.
We're not going to show up and hang out. I have
it.
other work to do. And then next SBAT, there'll be something we need to work on. Okay, let's all come together and do the work. And I feel like we work really, really well together. Even the new people that are slowly coming in, we all like work pretty well together. So
I love hearing that. And honestly, I might have to come back another time because I want to ask you so much more about it, if it's not too personal, about the coven and like what sort of inspires and drives it. But also, I want to say, like, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth here. On the one hand, yes, it irritates that I will physically bring my real whip and crack it if people can't focus. I will do it. But on the other hand, I take it as a positive sign where it's like, yes, okay, good. You should like each other. You should want to hang out. And the silver lining of that is like, all right, I think people so often are just waiting for an excuse to get together. A lot of people will not organize themselves for whatever reason, but if you so much as say, hey, I'm thinking about witchcraft and I want to see a bunch of my friends at this cafe, witches will come, pagans will come. If you build it, they will come.
Yep.
And so I want to say that to be like, wherever you are, whatever your situation is, if you feel any remote kind of lack or dissatisfaction with your local community, do something yourself. I promise you people will come. It might take a minute. I've had meetups with one other person. I've had shit completely flop repeatedly. Of course, like everyone, I don't think this is innately fakey, but of course people are going to post their successes online and not the flops. I like to talk about my flops because I don't want to give people a wrong idea. You are herding cats the more you try to do, but I happen to fucking love magic, so it's worth it to me. But anyways, if you just want people to yap with who are also pagan, I promise you, just say that and they will come. So
yeah, they will. And it always starts somewhere. Like the way we started was probably different than how other people started. And you just kind of build and see where it goes. Yeah. Some of the stuff we're doing, I never would have imagined it a couple years ago. Yeah. And then some of the stuff that I did imagine years ago took maybe a twist or was kind of turned a little bit in order to be better with more learning. And I just try and see everything as an adventure. What you're doing now is probably not what you're going to be doing in a couple years. And if it is even on the same wavelength, you'll be surprised how much better you are at it and how much more you know down the line. They always make a joke, we're all the neophytes anyway.
Right. If we're alive, then
yeah. If you're trying and you're learning and you're doing things, don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up if you're sick one day. Don't beat yourself up if you misspoke in a ritual, and just come back the next day, and that's it. But the whole coven and the order thing is probably a whole nother part 2.
I would love to come back if you'll have me. I really, really appreciate your insight. I wish I would have come out sooner, but I feel like this whole season I'll start to cap myself off. I've just been driving all over SoCal and trying to make the most of it, because LA is funny because it's a big city, but it feels like just a small town spread out over more space to me. But maybe I've been here too long. So anyways, where can people find the shop, find you, or how would you like folks to connect?
We are, for the physical shop, we are in Old World Village, Huntington Beach, right off the 405. And then if you want to see us online, we have YouTube, Instagram. We just We just gave in and made a TikTok. Can't promise I'll be on there.
Bless.
And everything is just Frey's Hermetic Supplies, so we're pretty easy to find no matter where we are. And our website, freyshermeticsupplies.com.
Beautiful. I will link all of that. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I will end the same way I always do, which is thank you for listening. But now close your computer screen, put your phone down, go outside, and go do some magic.
Yeah.
All right. Listeners, thank you for your ears and your eyeballs. And I want to say as well that if you have a small business, something that you would like boosted or put out there to my listeners like you, I am happy to take that on. I would like to make this podcast a little more viable. So if you have something that you would like to see me talk about on the podcast, get in touch with me at awen@primaldrilladry.com. Let me know what your small business is, what your idea is, and we can talk about how that would work. Mwah.